Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I am going to be talking about something that I have been wanting to talk about and haven't really been able to talk about. Financial independence, retiring early. So FIRE. Grab a cup of tea, take a seat, let's go over FIRE, what it is, what my plans are. So firstly, what is FIRE? Let's look at the Google definition of FIRE. The Google definition of financial independence, retire early, the first definition, is financial independence, retire early. FIRE is a financial movement defined by frugality and extreme savings and investment. By saving up to 70% of annual income, FIRE proponents aim to retire early and live off small withdrawals from their accumulated funds. So that is a good general definition of what FIRE is. Financial independence, retire early, let's break it up into two parts. The first part is financial independence, and that essentially means that you have enough money to live off and you are basically independent financially from a job. And in that regards, you can essentially live off of money that you have. You don't have to work. So the retire early part is that now you're financially independent and you have enough funds to sustain you in retirement, and from this point on in life, I guess, you decide to retire early and live off of that money that you're now financially independent from. So you don't need a day job, you don't need income basically, because you have this either residual income, this passive income, or this investment income that is going to sustain you now, so you don't have to work and you choose not to work. So that's the retire early part. So FIRE has been, it's not controversial, but it has had a lot of conversations around it about whether it's feasible, if it works. I know it works because I've seen people do it, about whether you can do it if you're on low income and how it's just unattainable. There's lots of different people with different opinions about it, and it really does depend on your lifestyle whether or not FIRE is right for you. I've had people just kind of shrug it off and laugh and be like, retiring, all right. Like, people don't really believe in it and they don't understand the concept of it. And I think that it's so new to people that they can't even wrap their head around the idea that you don't have to work for 50 years and get a pension to retire. Like, that is just, it basically destroys everything they've ever learned and everything they've ever been taught and everything they, I guess, are working for. And I think people don't want to wrap their heads around the idea because it scares them. It's like, especially if you're further along your career and you've been working your ass off for like 10 years and you've been building this, thinking, this is the way to get to financial freedom. This is my only route, you know, this is my route to get there. And it might be for some people, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that it scares them because they're like, don't say there's another way I could have done this that could have given me more of my time back, that I could have spent more time with my kids through. Like, don't tell me that now after I've suffered for however many years. And I think it shouldn't be looked at that way. And it shouldn't be that I can't believe I've wasted this amount of years when I could have been working towards something different. I don't think that's the case. I think just accept that every part of your journey is a part of your journey, and you wouldn't be who you are today if it wasn't for that journey. So that's how I like to look at FIRE. That's the definition of FIRE, and I'll go a bit further into that definition. So those are the two parts of FIRE: financial independence and retiring early. And usually what happens is that people will build up a pot of money in investments, usually because investments give one of the best returns, and they would draw down 4% of their investment portfolio every year so that they can live, and they would live off of that 4%. So you need to have, if you want to do FIRE, you have to have a big enough pot of money that when you draw down 4%, that amount that you draw down yearly is enough to sustain you for a year, to cover your expenses and everything you need. There are lots of different types of FIRE, and if you guys are interested in knowing about the different kinds of FIRE, I'm happy to make a video about that. Just let me know down below in the comment, or you can research. There are videos on YouTube that can tell you about the different types of FIRE, very extensive videos. But personally, originally I was aiming for normal FIRE, and now I'm leaning towards coast FIRE a little bit more, and I'll explain why a bit later. Why FIRE for me? The biggest reason that I want financial independence is to have location independence. So my biggest reason for doing FIRE is that I want to be able to live anywhere in the world. I know it probably sounds crazy, But a bit of background on me. I've lived on 3 continents. Fun fact, as an adult, once I graduated, I actually moved to Korea and I lived in Seoul for 3 years and I taught English for 3 years. I then moved from there to Vancouver, where I lived there for 3 years and I worked in a tech company and also did acting. Like I transitioned into doing acting before moving back here, where I've now lived in the UK, in London, for 3 years. And I have been doing acting / kind of trying to go back into tech, kind of not, because things happened to kind of like end that, and I was just like, I guess that's like the universe trying to tell me something. Outside of location independence, as a long-term traveler, I'm someone who likes to travel long-term. I don't really like to do short trips. I only do them if I have not much choice, because I have to work. So usually it's one of the reasons I am self-employed, because I like the flexibility of being able to like just take a trip if I want to, because travel brings me the most joy. It's where I spend most of my money, outside of on my own business. So location independence is the biggest thing I want. I want to be able to work from anywhere in the world and be able to have enough to sustain that lifestyle. I do also want to have a home base. I'm not alone. So I am going to be doing F.I.R.E with my husband. He's not really into like F.I.R.E that much, honestly. He wants to retire. He's happy to retire. He just doesn't have the time to think about the logistics of it. So he has his own business and I know him more than he knows himself. And I think that he will be working for longer than he thinks he wants to, if that makes sense. I think he loves doing what he does so much that he won't step back from it, even when he can. I personally am planning for F.I.R.E alone right now, initially. And then afterwards, aiming to go higher to reach F.I.R.E with him and any family we create. And the second reason for me wanting F.I.R.E is I want to have the freedom to work part-time, number one, but also to not worry about money. So I want to be able to work part-time, working for the actual sake and love and enjoyment of working, not because I need to make money, if that makes sense. So I want to be able to work part-time, but to have the flexibility to not actually have to work if I don't want to, or to do some work online when I need to, if the need arises and maybe I can't draw down from my portfolio. I want to have the flexibility to be able to work online and to work only when I want to, rather than having the need to do it. I should probably talk about where I'm at right now before I talk about my plans for F.I.R.E. So where I'm at right now, as I said, when I was in Vancouver, I transitioned from working in, I was working at a temp company, and I transitioned out of that because I was originally going to go back and teach in Korea, and then it just never worked out. Something happened and it never worked out. And at the time I just started doing film work part-time because my brother's an actor and he was talking about doing it here, and I was like, oh, I should try it in Vancouver. So I got into it. I ended up really loving it. I was with an agency and I was doing some commercial work, so I was making relatively good money, and I realized I could do this full-time and be making quite good money, but I would have the flexibility to do anything else I wanted because I didn't have to take work. Like, I could just choose to take work. And that changed my world. Honestly, that was the first thing that kind of changed the way I felt about working a 9 to 5 and working full time. That's how I kind of got into acting, and that's what I've been doing since I came back here, outside of when I moved into full-time work for a bit. That didn't work out, and then I got married and I had a long honeymoon. It was like our honeymoon extended like 6 months or something. We were traveling every couple of months after our honeymoon, and then everything else happened, you know? The big P. The big P happened, guys. The big P, the big C, it happened. And so, yeah, I just haven't transitioned back into full-time work. And right now I'm working essentially part-time in film. So I'm part-time doing film work and being a film extra and doing other stuff on the side like YouTube and other side hustle things. So that's currently where I'm at, and I've been contemplating my next step. My F.I.R.E plan is to replace my income, and starting with a minimum of at least £1,000 a month and working my way up from there. My expenses right now are super low, and I think my expenses when I reach F.I.R.E will also be low. Like, I'm assuming they're gonna be lower than they are now because we don't own a place, and once we own our own place, our expenses will be slashed essentially in half. So that's what I'm kind of aiming and projecting what our expenses will be in the future, but also just kind of working with what I have now. It's a bit difficult to actually know and estimate because we're not at our final stage, if that makes sense. Like there's nothing for me to say where we will be in 5 years, 10 years. I can only plan and guess. So I want to have £150,000 invested to draw down about £500 a month, which is £6,000 a year. And that will cover my base expenses. So my expenses, because as I said, this is my plan for just me. And then eventually I will up that plan to include my husband if we need to do this, like, because essentially we might not even need to do FIRE, but I do want to plan for it, just knowing in advance, knowing we have that plan, if that makes sense. So £150,000 invested to draw down £500 per month, which would be £6,000 a year, to be making £300 per month in passive income, and to have £200 of active side hustle income. So money I'm actively working for, maybe doing some side hustles, or even doing film work and extra work and earning doing a couple of days on set a month to make up that extra £200. Essentially that 300 of passive and that 200 of active side hustle income isn't actually needed. It's just something I want to do to have money to travel with, and also to have just money for fun and whatever else. I do want to keep doing work. I don't want to retire. Like, I've done the sit at home thing, you know, I think we've all experienced it over the last however long because of everything that happened, and it's not for me. I want to be out. If anything, I want to be traveling. I don't mind sitting and doing just living my daily life, writing, working online if I'm abroad. But I need to get out once in a while if I'm here in London, because, you know, this concrete jungle, it's not really the most pretty thing to look at. But it will be nice to have, I think when we will be eventually moving from where we live, and although the view here is beautiful, we love the spot, we do want somewhere a bit more permanent that we can set our roots down, so we can have a base and my husband can have a base. So that would give me an income of £800 per month, which would cover my expenses and anything I need to do, as well as maybe some traveling once in a while. Essentially, I could live off of that pretty much anywhere else in the world and it will be cheaper. But here it's not, obviously, actually it's possible to live off that, but it's a bit harder. So as I said, my expenses are very low currently, and I expect them to not be much higher than this. When I reach FIRE, they should, if anything, be less than that. Fingers crossed. However, it might not be the case. As I said, I can't predict the future and I don't know what we're going to be doing. I never explained how to calculate your FIRE number. So the way to calculate your FIRE number is to figure out how much your monthly expenses are. So we'll do mine, for example. Let's say £500 would be my monthly expenses. You can do it by calculating your expenses now, if you don't know what your future expenses are, or your future expenses if you have an idea of what those will be. That will be more accurate to get your FIRE number. So you calculate your monthly expenses, we'll use 500 as an example, and then you multiply that by 12, which is £6,000, so that's how much your yearly expenses are. And then you times that number by 25, and that will give you your FIRE number. So for me, it would have been 150,000. And that's how much I would need in order for my investment pot to not basically run out. Another thing I didn't say was that money is intended to keep me until a traditional retirement of around 65-ish. So I actually, even though the likelihood of me running out of that money is quite slim, because there's some study done in how the success rate is dependent on your drawdown percentage, as well as dependent on how many years you are drawing it down for. 4% in the 25 range should generally last until my traditional retirement. However, if you were to just live off this forever, maybe going with a safer rate of times 30 rather than times 25 to give yourself buffer, or drawing down a smaller amount over time instead, or even adjusting year by year how much you would draw down from your portfolio. These are all things that you'll probably have to put in place to make sure you don't run out of money. But I am planning to have this pot for about 20-30 years before I take out any pensions I have. So I do have a few pensions currently, I have one in Canada, one in Korea, so I would have to go and take those from those respective countries, depending on where I was living at the time. I have a SIP here in the UK, and I'd be contributing to that over the next few years as well, so that can grow till 55, or at the point I think when I can take it out it'll be 57, but generally till probably about 60-65 is when I would dip into that SIP, and for the rest it'll probably be 65-67 depending on each country what the age of retirement is. Just thought I would add that in there. So yeah, calculating your FIRE number, that's how you do it, and having a strategy is something that you will need as well on what you will be doing, how long you will be doing it for, knowing how much you need. These are all things that will help you to make sure you have a successful early retirement. Also, I will likely be having an emergency fund of some sort. Like, I definitely will have an emergency fund, not likely, I already have one, but we will probably have a very substantial emergency fund as well before I feel very comfortable to do it, just because I always want to be prepared. Like, I do not like surprises. I have realized this about myself. I don't like surprises. I need to know that everything is covered if anything happens, especially if we still have a mortgage or anything like that. So yeah, one thing I didn't mention was how I'm going to be getting there. I'll talk about how I plan to get to FIRE, and then I'll talk about my second FIRE plan. This gets a bit complicated, guys. So right now I'm doing a couple of courses, and then I'm hoping to do an apprenticeship, maybe. I'm considering this. This is like my first plan in software engineering. So I'm leaning towards software engineering, software development, but I'm open to options with it. But currently I really like the idea of like app development, and I'm really into like that right now, and I'm kind of working on creating my own app right now. I'm teaching myself to code basically so that I can have better options, and I want to do an apprenticeship so then I can have like the foundation in software development, so then I can take that and work basically anywhere in the world, if that makes sense. So I would preferably like to be freelance later on, and if we move back to like Canada, let's say, I have that basis in software engineering that I could do potentially contract work. The pay for software engineering in the UK is really, I don't want to say low, but it's pretty low in comparison to the rest of the world. However, in Canada, the income for, I can even Google it for you. Hey Google, how much do software engineers make in Vancouver?
Do you want to know how much a software engineer earns in Canada?
Yes.
On the website Indeed.com, they say the average salary for a software engineer is $90,526 per year in Canada.
Software engineers earn around, on average, apparently to Google, $90,000 in Canada. That is about £53,000 in the UK. It's a bit higher than you would get paid. And when you compare that, you can't compare apples to apples. I hate converting. As I've lived abroad, I know this doesn't work. Like, converting your money doesn't make sense. So the average salary of a software engineer in the UK is $37,553. So you can see the difference in that. 50, 37. That's a big difference. That's a 20K difference. Well, almost 20K difference. That's like a 15K difference. So later on, if we do move back to Canada, I do want to have the option that if I want to go back into full-time work, or if I want to freelance, do contract work, I do have this skill that I can use. I do have other skills, but this is something that I would enjoy doing on the side, enjoy doing as a hobby. So I'm moving into software engineering and hopefully gonna do an apprenticeship. My dream is to work at a startup because I love startups. I always have. I've generally worked mostly at startups because I just really enjoy that culture of everyone coming together to build something and make it great really fast. That's where I thrive. So that's where I'm deciding like to move into to improve my income, and so I can save a lot faster. So yeah, moving in to programming so I can improve my income and save as much money as I can over like the next 5 years. That's really what I'm going with here. My second plan, £540,000 invested. That would be money to cover both me, my husband, and two kids. I don't have any kids right now, guys. Okay, there are no kids in the picture right now, but I am assuming there will be in the future. So I do want to plan for them just in case. Like, I know they're coming at some point in life. Not today. I'm actually 30 years old. I don't know if I said that yet. I'm 30 years old right now, and I'm planning to retire when I'm 40 years old. So that's just to give you an idea roughly of where I'm at. And then to have £500 in passive income and £300 in active side hustle income, contract work income. That would give us an income of £2,600 per month, which if we're in Canada, because we potentially will be there in 10 years time and potentially retire there, potentially not sure yet. We're undecided. Vancouver's very expensive. BC is really expensive to live in. But that would give us an income of 4,491 Canadian dollars, which is £2,600. So that's a lot to live off. It's a good amount of money to live off in Canada. I've lived in Canada, so I know how much my expenses were. I think I was spending about the same amount there as I was here. Vancouver and London are quite similar in like the cost of living. I think it was maybe a little bit more expensive in Vancouver if we do pound to dollar rather than conversion. So Vancouver is a pretty expensive city to live in, not gonna lie. But if we move to BC, it might not be Vancouver. It could be in the Okanagan somewhere. We have family there, and honestly, it's way more beautiful. I like lakes and I love mountains, and as much as I love being in Vancouver and having the backdrop of mountains, it would be nice to live in the Okanagan. I don't know. We're undecided yet on where we're gonna settle down. It will depend on my husband's business and how that kind of pans out, where he decides his home base to be. And we'll decide together, and it also depends on if we have kids. So many variables, guys. It's really hard to plan for FIRE if you're not a fully formed family. This is why I wanted to make this video, because I had been kind of putting this off making this video because I didn't know what my full FIRE plan is yet. So I just have a couple of plans and I'm working towards the first one. When I hit the first one, I can work towards the second one. And there's so many variables, it's really hard to guess this, you know, because I'm planning to retire in 10 years, potentially 5 years, and then coast. Which brings me on to my next part and final part of this video is Coast FIRE. So Coast, I'll just quickly explain what Coast FIRE is. Coast financial independence is essentially having enough of a pot saved up in investments that you can stop investing and you can like work part-time to cover your expenses and to cover your daily living. And that money that you have invested will now just grow on its own until the point where you need to retire. So I'll give you an example. My Coast FIRE number would be for my 150,000, right? My Coast FIRE number would be £75,000. And then if I have that invested, I'm gonna put this into a compound interest site so you can kind of see the actual numbers. 75,000 and interest rate of 8, we're gonna go with, because the average of the global stock market, which is where most of my money is invested, is about 12% for a global index fund. So I'm going with 8 to adjust for inflation and just have a buffer. So going for the low end there, we'll say 10 years of coasting for it. So that would be, if I did it in 5 years and I was 35, it would coast till I was 45. Then I can just draw down, we'll see. Okay, so then yearly and no deposits, calculate. So in 10 years, I would have £161,619.37. And that would be just from that 75,000 initial investment, just coasting without me putting any additional deposits for 10 years. And then I would hit my current financial independence number. Obviously, this isn't like countering in anything else that's happening and my plan B, it's not countering my second plan. It's just accounting for my own goal to have that £500 coming in every month and to supplement my income with side hustles, passive income, and part-time work. So that is how Coast FIRE would work, and coasting financial independence is a good alternative. The reason why anyone would do this is maybe because they want to retire earlier than normal. Maybe they have a lower, like if you have a lower financial independence number goal like I do, and your expenses are very low and you don't spend a lot generally, and you know what your expenses will be and what you generally spend your money on. Coast-Fi might work well for you if you want to work a lot now for a little while and then push off financial independence and go part-time. It's quite similar to Barista F.I.R.E in that way. Go part-time so you can earn enough to cover your expenses but not have to worry about saving for retirement. So Coast Financial Independence is a really great option for anyone who's wanting to switch to part-time work but still have enough to carry them through their FIRE whenever they decide to reach FIRE. And the great thing about it is that it gives you the option to just stop. The problem I think that a lot of people find with FIRE is that it's like extreme frugal living, extreme high savings in order to reach that number so that they can retire sooner. But it's worth thinking about an alternative, and Mama Furfa talks about this a lot in her channel. I've not met many people who are into Coast-Fi, and I was really shocked when she said that it was something that she is doing or considering the closest FIRE goal that they have as a family, because I never knew anyone else who was really doing Coast-Fi or who aspired to do Coast-Fi. So Coast Financial Independence has always kind of been like the one I want to do, because I don't want to stop working anyways, and I rather do all my investing and then just be able to just focus on me, and then the rest is just full income that I can take and not have to save, and just live freely wherever I want, doing some part-time work and just enjoying life. And something that I forgot to add is that it would take me investing about £800 a month or so for 10 years to reach the £150,000 currently. So yeah, based off of what I have, a little bit based off of what I have already invested, it would take probably me investing about £800 a month for 10 years, which is really long, and I don't plan to do that. So I do a plan to start investing even more aggressively so I can reach that number faster, and essentially my main goal is to replace my income. So as soon as I replace my income, I really am not too worried about FIRE so much. So if I replace my income with passive income and online sources, I didn't talk much about dividends. That's another thing that is kind of in my plan as well. So part of it will be made up by dividends, part of it will be made up by cash, part of it will be made up through investment drawdown and through passive sources like online with like YouTube, my blog, Medium, all my other passive income sources combined as well. So I'm planning to like replace my income with all of those things that I just said, hopefully earlier rather than later, so then I can just fully concentrate on getting the rest of my income that I make if I do part-time work or contract work into investing. So I really just wanted to discuss my alternatives. This might be all over the place, and I'm so sorry if it is really all over the place, because I know it is, but it's really hard to, as I've said before, plan for this future when, number one, we don't really know where we're gonna be in 5 years. Number two, we don't know like our children's situation yet, you know, so we're not really a fully formed family unit yet or family household because we don't have kids. So I do have, it might be something I will talk about if you guys are interested, but I actually have a sinking fund for this sounds terrible, but here we are. I have a sinking fund for having a child. It's not, I won't call it a sinking fund, that sounds terrible, but sinking funds basically are pots of money you put away for bills or things that you know that you're gonna have, so things that come around all the time like Christmas, council tax, things like that. So I have some sinking funds, and I've created one for having a baby. I know this sounds crazy, but I am self-employed, so I have to think about all these things like way in advance, just because I won't have maternity leave if as I'm currently self-employed. Whenever I decide to have kids, like I won't have that. I will have a maternity allowance through the government, but you just never know with these things. So it's better that I want to be prepared and have enough saved up for whenever we decide to have a kid, like, so that is just there. I don't know when that's gonna be. I've told a couple of people about it and they were like, what? That's so weird, you can't plan for kids. And I'm like, but if I'm not planning to have them right this second, why can't I plan for having a kid? Honestly, I think it's so smart, but I don't know, I think people think it's weird. We have a savings fund for having a child, because I'm like, I calculated how much it would roughly cost to have a kid in its first year, looked at lots of articles and looked at things that you would need, things you would buy, put it all together and came up with a number, and I was like, okay, yeah, this is like mid to high end. I probably won't need this much. I don't spend a lot on me, and I can see myself spending more on a child and wanting to get them the best stuff, but they have grandparents, they have so much family that I think that they're gonna have the kid is gonna have more than enough toys and stuff, right? Anyways, I just thought I'd put that in there because I have a separate amount that we're putting away just for the first year of having a child, so as another buffer. But that is my financial independence, retiring early plan. It's probably gonna change, and if it does, I will make an update. As my income changes, my goals will change. As my passive income changes and my side hustles evolve and things like that, that will obviously change as well, probably. I'm just guessing it will change. So if it does, I will try and update you guys and let you know where I'm at. But I would love to know what your FIRE goals are down below. Are you on the road to FIRE? What do you think about FIRE? I'm really curious to find people with different viewpoints. So let's start a conversation in the comments, and I will see you guys next time for another video. Until then, bye.